Hello, and welcome back to The Myth Within. I'm Dr. Tom, and I'm very grateful that you decided to join me here today. Spring is here, and there's no better time to talk about the idea of ascent. When we think of ascent, there's a lot of mythological underpinnings. That's because this idea of the notion of ascending really touches us at an emotional, a psychological, even a spiritual capacity. And when we think of ascent could be really in any direction that we dream. The idea of advancing confidently in the directions of one's dreams is actually a notion of ascending. You're in a place right now that you're not quite where you want to be, so you aspire to become something greater, to do something greater in life, whether that feat be physical, mental, emotional, or even spiritual. In fact, one of my favorite quotes comes from Norman Vincent Peale, and it reads, "Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars." What a beautiful quote. But what does this mean from the mythological perspective? To shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll land amongst stars. The idea behind this is to ascend. But when we take a look at the idea of ascent, there is some dangers involved with it because when we shoot for the moon, when we shoot for that ascending value, whatever dream that may be, we have to make sure that a firm foundation is there to prompt our journey forward. Going into the quagmire and shooting for a goal without having the necessary foundation present to push yourself through the hard times really can create a means by which descent occurs. And this is a natural paradox as it relates to this idea of ascending or aspiring towards one's dreams. In fact, this is the underpinnings of the myth of Daedalus and Icarus. The father and son who aspired with their wings to escape a prison that they were trapped within, only for the son to ascend without taking the necessary precautions of learning the foundation that his father was trying to teach him in building the means of transportation they escaped, and thus descending to his doom. In fact, this week we'll explore this myth of Daedalus in particular, especially as it relates to the Thomas Bulfinch version and Bulfinch's mythology. He wrote a beautiful piece on Daedalus and Icarus, and this myth really touches upon the paradox of ascent the without the foundation of first descending. Now, when we think of descent, we think of depression. We think of this ideal of who wants to fall. We fall from grace in Christianity. We fall from God's love in the book of Genesis. This is a sin. It's a process of going into the underbelly in a lot of ways. It's tilling the earth. It's a life filled with being on the low ground. This really touches upon this ideal of the myth of Persephone that we began to explore a little bit yesterday as descending into the underworld. But there's some true value in the psychological descent needed to gain one's grounding in order to aspire forward, to advance confidently in the direction of their dreams. And so, as we begin to look at the myth of Daedalus and his son Icarus, this will begin to become more present. Now, in the reading of the myth of Daedalus, I'm going to break it into pieces because there's specific aspects of the story that really build upon itself. And hopefully, in the pieces, we'll begin to formulate more of a hermeneutic, more of a deeper understanding of the whole by the sum of its pieces, as well as once we find the whole, we'll be able to make sense of each aspect of the piece that is present. So, without further ado, here's Daedalus from Thomas Bulfinch. The labyrinth from which Theseus escaped by means of the clue of Ariadne was built by Daedalus, a most skillful artificer. It was an edifice with numberless winding passages and turnings opening into one another and seeming to have neither beginning nor end, like the river Meander, which returns on itself and flows now onward, now backward, in its course to the sea. Daedalus built the labyrinth for King Minos, but afterwards lost the favor of the king and was shut up in the tower. He contrived to make his escape from his prison, but could not leave the island by the sea, as the king kept strict watch on all the vessels and permitted none to sail without being carefully searched. Minos may control the land and the sea, said Daedalus, but not the regions of the air. King Minos's Labyrinth. A labyrinth with numberless winding passages and turnings opening into one another and seeming to have neither beginning nor end. Doesn't it seem that life meanders in such a way? Neither forward nor backwards. Sometimes we look to the past to make sense of the present. Sometimes we aspire to the future to give ourselves goals to meet in the here and now. I think this is a human condition that we all wander within the labyrinth. And at times, this ideal of being imprisoned in this labyrinth becomes really the workings of the mind. At times, we could get lost in thought. At times, we can meander to and from our course, searching for possibly the grass being greener on the other side, or maybe looking back upon past glories once lived and yearning to have those same feelings again. This is the plight of consciousness, and our consciousness really becomes the means by which we begin to navigate our life's journey. Now, consciousness is not an area solely made for thought. It's also a notion of feeling that's present. Our bodies, much like our mind, have a consciousness within itself. When we lose a loved one, it's not our head that hurts; it's our whole body that hurts, and our whole body goes into a state of grief. And so, this consciousness is an area of feeling as well as an area of thought processes of how we create the stories by which our psyche ebbs and flows and gains the momentum needed to meander through this endless labyrinth. And this endless labyrinth really becomes the means by which we begin to process our life forward. There's neither beginning nor end, as the story says. The sea, it flows onward, now backwards, and it moves towards its natural course to find a state of homeostasis. And in the story, Daedalus is imprisoned. He built the labyrinth himself, but becomes imprisoned in it because he lost the blessings of the King Minos. And in this area of being imprisoned, he couldn't escape by the low points. He couldn't escape by just walking out of the labyrinth. He couldn't escape by sea, the lowest of the low points, that area of unconsciousness. He had to aspire. He had to go into this realm of thought, this realm of the air, this realm of the Father, like we're exploring within the North Wind and the Sun. in order to plan his escape. So for this, it wasn't going to be a feeling based unconscious escape. This was going to be something of pure logic, something that he would have to work himself through based upon intellectual prowess. This brings it to the archetypal realm of the air, the archetypal realm of the sun, what's typically more masculine in its moral predisposition. And so what happens here is Daedalus has to begin to touch upon the father archetype within, even before we are introduced to his son, Icarus. And from there, what happens is he begins to see the true nature of what it means to be a loving man, a loving father. Until next time, the story will be continued. However, coming up, we will see how this myth unfolds to really look at the means by which fatherly love needs to help the next generation aspire towards its natural course. Until next time, I thank you guys for joining me. We will continue our exploration of the myth of Daedalus soon. And I wish you namaste, my friends, and may blessings find you as you advance confidently in the direction of your dreams. Thank you.